We need to get.
I mean, she was moving on this weekend.
You need a banner?
I have, hey, I'm making hats. I'm making hats with the seal on.
Western?
I already, I'm making, you want it?
I was like,
I have
I
I have.
I still have my hats.
Hats there.
Oh, it's so
So
racial.
that- And then the city seal.
I used to the other day. And I think I used that word in it.
All right, this stuff is. What's the strength of this?
Oh, hey.
Mr. Lewis coming?
Yeah, I saw him pull it.
Oh, cool, all right. I was just gonna say, if he doesn't come in, all the things.
Here he is.
Yes.
Okay. You- Sorry. Your own name.
I spelled it wrong, yeah.
It's just. Here it is. This is what happened. And it's true.
Yeah.
This is the area where-
It's the love that never ends, right? Go. And everything.
You need that? You need it?
No, just touch it, see if. Imagine, there you go.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
It's this, I think it's that.
I don't know if it's,
Oh, it's that. Just don't touch it.
Don't touch it.
Da, 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 da.
Christie.
I think I dropped it on.
Oh, yeah.
Bring it, so it's just pretty.
I think my-
I did.
Oh, it's too funny. I was eating some pickles on that one show.
Clear title. No. Like 5 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock and ask that City Clerk Cindy, you read the statement of compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act into the record, please.
This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, with the annual notice provided to the Hunterdon County Democrat, the Trenton Times. The meeting notice was sent to the members on the listserv, department heads, and the city engineer. The meeting agenda was posted on the city's website and the bulletin board at City Hall. The meeting agenda offers planned action items known at the time of publication and is subject to change. This meeting is being streamed live and recorded using the Zoom meeting platform. Roll call.
Yes, please.
Councilwoman Kaminsky.
Here.
Councilwoman Lambert.
Here.
Councilman Lai.
Here.
Council President Stegman.
Here.
Mayor Noel.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a moment to honor those serving the United States Armed Forces here and abroad. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for coming. How many people do we have on the phone? Great. We'll begin with the approval of minutes. So we have the minutes from April 20th, open and closed session. The May 4th, May 4th work session minutes are not yet available. Neither are the May 11th special session minutes, which should be ready at our next meeting on June 15th. So everybody have a chance to look through the minutes. Are there any questions or concerns about the minutes?
Just for the record, I would like to note, and Lindsay, Cindy are aware that the link to the April 20th meeting minutes, I couldn't open that document and make suggestions, so I'm just gonna let it go.
Yeah, well, neither could I. We talked about it today,
Yeah.
and they were trying to sort it out. I read through the document. I didn't have any suggested edits.
Oh,
So
wait a minute, you know what, I just thought of something. I think my Google Chrome just updated, and I'll bet it has to do with that.
no, I think we had the same problem.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I could download it as a Google Doc or open it as a Google Doc, but I couldn't edit it in.
I got a viewer.
Yeah.
Like the black screen.
Yeah, that's what I have.
And then it says on the top, opening Google Docs, and then it says you get an error. But that's what I was just thinking, it just popped into my head, maybe it was the update, so I don't know,
I opened it.
but we'll let it go. I mean,
half
you know,
hour ago.
Okay.
because you know me, I'm just fixing grammar. So,
I didn't catch
But
it.
you were okay. You were okay.
No, yeah,
Okay,
I double checked.
we'll play a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or-
So, Council President, you were able to like open the document like you normally do and do an edit or suggest changes, okay?
And I saw your suggestion.
For the second one.
No, this is the meeting minutes, not the closed session.
No, they will open both.
Oh. Well,
Okay.
whatever.
Magic.
Well, as long as,
Issue has been logged. That's okay.
as long as there were no corrections to that set of minutes, I think we're okay moving forward. Have a motion to approve the minutes, please.
So moved.
All in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? No, motion carries. All right, next I would note that we had administrative reports that were sent out to the council. The police department sent theirs out kind of late in the afternoon. We talked in City Hall today a little bit about just kind of the lag time of when reports are actually done and how quickly they can sometimes get to us. And so they're all there at the moment, but most of them will be a month behind, right?
That's correct. It's the court that is not there. We,
Sorry.
you know, we're working, when you get the report in May, it's really for April. So it all depends on when we get our bank statements. When, you know, that's really what ties us over. So if we get them on time and the meeting is like at the 18th, usually you'll have them all. But the 15th, we may not have our statements, giving us enough time to prove them out. Just so you know.
And I think I'm going to start just picking one thing out of the administrative reports to share with the public every month, because I think there's plenty in there that's interesting. To date, the city's collected 459 tons of trash in the city, which is 918,000 pounds. It's a lot of trash. They collected 7,000 pounds over Shad Fest weekend.
Oh,
So it's a lot of-
does that include sparkle?
it's a lot of fish bones. No, it's just Shad Fest. All right, now having those fantastically interesting facts available to the public, I would ask for a motion to approve the administrative reports.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. All right. So we have public participation. So we have two of those this evening. We also have the public hearing and second reading for both the cap ordinance and the city budget. So there's plenty of time this evening to discuss a variety of things. The one thing I'm going to ask, if people have questions about the budget or specifically questions about the budget, if we could ask them during that time, I'd really love to be able to let our professionals go after the budget issues have been kind of worked through. So they don't have to stay here all the way to the end. So if we could just bear that in mind, I'd appreciate it. So with that, I will open this up to public comment. As usual, if you could please step up to the microphone as you are able. State your name and your address. You have 3 minutes of uninterrupted time for questions or comments. The council may or may not respond.
John Hitchcock, 99 Carter Street. I brought with me this evening some information that you may or may not have, and so it would be a good idea if you do have it. And so if I give it to you, then I'm sure you do. The first is that in 1973, we advanced the Historical Society from what I would call the club. We got a 501c3, so now I believe that we're running as a regular operating throughout it can give tax benefits to people who make donations. And so as such, the Historical Society became a legal entity in 1973. If we can give them out, we'll shout out 50 years. Okay, thank you. That was it. In 1970, please, I'm not over with here, 77 through 78. And I had the numbers here. It was, the numbers are larger than what I had here, but we had about 28 or 30 volunteers who did the research necessary for the National Register, Historic Register nomination. And so I brought with me the names of those people that participated to the degree that I have that known. But it became almost like a family and a visitor thing. So people sometimes had friends over during the week or on the weekend, and they went up and did research. So the number is much larger of people who perform this. Entirely done by volunteer work in Lambertville from the city of Lambertville. And as such, it could be duplicated if we didn't have volunteers. And so in that, it was young enthusiastic people, it was young at heart people, some of whom were in historic preservation heaven. So I thought it would be a good idea to bring that in. Some actually got married and changed their name. So when you see the second name, it's because they got married. The other thing is, there's an element that thinks that I'm rather prejudiced about Lambertville, that could be. But when I talk about the historic, the National Register nomination zone, or the preservation zone, it has a lot of different names. The Department of Interior is very specific on the district. They want everything to be compacted. Whereas in Lambertville, we have many structures up on the hill that many communities would die to have in their community for historic preservation. Particularly, that's going to be the hot button of the future. So that remains to be something perhaps interested parties can look at. My day is done. But what I brought with me was the actual historic district. And we have the legends of how this was laid out. And not only we were the largest nomination of, as I said, contributing, which is historic buildings in the country. We're the only ones who did it very difficult. And National Parks in particular will never get any if we do it your way. what it was, we not only have the dating with the color code legend, you only get one because of the color. And the other is it was rated by architects that were working with Gibson and Bowers for us as outstanding, significant, notable, and none meant they were stuck in it this part of the district. But some have, in their own way, they have achieved a certain element such as diamond silver, made the trays that you see in matching things of that nature can be used. And so they have an significance. But I brought this with me so you would be able to know how important our National Workers Denomination was, particularly since our good buddy down in Washington actually included Joe Biden in his original, part 1, section 1, was to conserve our national treasures. First thing he wrote about. And so I think we ought to call on when the time is appropriate to let them know that we care about what goes on here. So I want that here for you to copy, take a look at it. And I also brought that we in town have developed our individual design guidelines. We have a whole book of these that Historical Preservation Commission used to make sure people had an opportunity to take a look at as a judgment factor, so they could pick up on the responsibility that they have as stewards for the structure that they have there. So I do all this. Want to just take a mention that I read from the information I gave on March on the disturbed surface and what was occurring up on the power lines and things of that nature. That's so heavily compressed. And the water conservation people only studied where they were working, and they were doing other work all over up there, which impacted us down here. So I have other things I can bring to bear and give the city if they wanted. But I wanted you to know that what I did is I read from this, I signed and dated it, so it's copyrighted, and it is a document. Copyright Act 76, and that would do it. I think it's very important, as I discussed with one of the council members here, that we are on top of our history and are given as much as we can to the folks here in town in the way of education. Thank you very much. There's other things I can say. I want to say good evening. Thank you.
Jeff Fiddle, 33 Wilson Street. I was just wondering if there's any update on the village apartments and what's happening there as far as potential coming in for a zone change or declaration of area need redevelopment. You can answer that later. Since I'm up, I'm not really going to ask questions on the budget, but I do want to say something. That's okay now, or should I come back?
If you'd like to say that,
So we don't have to come back. I just want to, thank you and staff for all the work that has been done on the budget. I know it's difficult, there's times of inflation and limited resources. But I think one thing I'm a little disappointed in is that between the draft budget and now, there really hasn't been many changes. And this is a time when so many people are hurting because of high rents in this town, or the state of New Jersey now is starting to get a little nervous that their revenues are down now. Next year might be worse. That you really should take another look at the budget and not adopt it tonight, and go back and see, because I know it's hard to get, blood out of stones, but on the other hand, I think it would be a good thing for the town to see if we can take another chance, look and see if there's a little area, take a scalpel and maybe trim a little here, a little there, maybe find an area where you don't need to spend now, you can see later. Sometimes boards that's why, because they don't really look at the materials and reading it all. And other little things. So anywhere there's discretionary funds, I know salaries, and most people are donating it for other purposes, but maybe you can trim that back a little bit. But any kind of other discretionary funds, because I think it really is important. And my main reason is it's not just this year, it's the future years. We're kind of been going on this trajectory going up, 8%, whatever. I look at 11 last last year and 12, 11 or 12 this year. And we keep going up, and we need to try to slow that rate of rise or increase for the municipal outlays as much as possible. So I just want to thank you, and I hope you take another look at it.
No,
Jeffrey Boyd, South Franklin Street. In regards to what Jeff just said, we've been renting out here to tenants in this town for years. All of our tenants that left didn't leave the area, they left Lambertville. They all went over to New Hope or across the river at least. And I'd just like you to keep that in mind as an indicator if you choose to raise the taxes.
Robert Carmelli, I'm here tonight on behalf of Maxwell Assets. I want to thank everyone for taking time to let me speak this evening. And what I really want to talk about in this portion are some community and public efforts that I would like to see, and we're respectfully asking that they proceed. And we are more than willing to meet and give time and volunteer to help with these. As Mark Curry of East Lumber said, let's mitigate, not regulate. And I think that was a very well phrased term. And there are several efforts for flood prevention, protection, and mitigation that I think we can make a lot of progress on as a community. And I do recognize and understand there are many competing interests for the time of all of you and also the employees in the city. But these efforts are really required to protect the public safety, and the property here in Lambertville, and to preserve the town. One of those key efforts we think is the cleaning of the stream. I think it was a lot of foresight that the town budgeted and bonded money to get that done. It's unfortunate that DEP did not approve the general permit, but we'd like to be involved in an effort to go back to DEP. I'm happy to speak to the engineers. We've been communicating with the mayor. I've spent a good part of my career trying to help advance projects like this. There has to be a way to get it done, whether it's an emergency permit, permit by rule. There has to be a way to get it done. I looked at the application, which I thank Ms. Edge for providing, and it was a good application. And there was some disagreement among professionals. So again, we'd like to see that pursued and have an active strategy to get that done before we're in another hurricane season. Also, the flow chart and the process to follow in the event of a flood. We are approaching another storm season, and we ask for a commitment and a schedule, and hopefully it will be available this summer. We understand that all of the city's employees, Mr. Rogers is one, they wear a lot of hats. They have a lot of different jobs and they're busy. And we would just ask leadership to try to help them prioritize so this gets done. In the short run, I hope it's the long run, but maybe the short run, we think it would save the town's employees a lot, city's employees a lot of effort, because residents, property owners would have this guide to go to. And so they wouldn't be standing in line all to ask the same question. They'd at least have the process laid out and come with specific questions. In that regard, we think that the committee that has been proposed, we'd like a commitment to get that started. So it's a help desk and a work group that will meet. And last, the certified status of the city, certified local government status for the historic structure designation. I think it's a big win for the city. The historic structure definition and easy variance, I don't want to say automatic, but the variance process that would relieve a lot of the expense and time is probably not available to the citizens of Lambertville because of the definition right now of historic structure, and a lot of efforts being made to change that. But we think on a parallel track, again, this work group business committee would help, and we could get the certified status. I think my time is up, but I hope I covered everything. Questions, we're really available and happy to meet, to dialogue and discuss. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room?
Judy, do you want to go ahead? You might have to unmute.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yes.
Sorry, I'm not in town, as you know, and I'm trying to speak to you just briefly to say, as a matter of process about the budget, it's my understanding that we are under no absolute requirement to have you pass a budget tonight. And I'm really asking, again, as I did on the 11th, please give their time for people in town and others who are more knowledgeable than I about all the details to find some ways to reduce parts of this budget so that we do not continue to go up without doing that process. So that's just my request. And I again ask that you not pass the budget tonight, give some more time and see if we can do a better careful, as Mr. Tittle said, a very careful scalpel-like approach. Thank you.
I have a motion to close the public comment period, please. Second. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Okay, we close the public comment period. Now we will move on to the public hearing for the 2023 budget. The first item is the cap bank ordinance, which is ordinance number 15-2023. This is an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits, NJSA 40A:4-45.14. This time I would open the public hearing for comments or questions from the public. Just on the cap part. Just on the cap. Can we finish the public comment period first, please? Anybody online?
No.
Okay. May I have a motion to close the public comment period on the cap bank ordinance? Second, please. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. The motion carries. Council President, do you have a question or a
I
comment?
was just making an observation. In the past, we had budgeted in such a way where we were able to bank some of the percentage and use it to offset. So it's something to work for going forward.
This does stuff, doesn't it? This
What
bank
that
loans.
does, correct?
So that by taking this action, you should take a cap back adjustment there, whether or not you use it or not in the budget. It's White House precedent. But just because we take the cap back, raises this, we're actually going to use it. So you build that bank and you use it.
Thank you.
You're not supposed to touch it at all.
No.
No, I think that fixed it.
When you mentioned we could bank it, I'm sorry.
Oh, geez.
There we go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
just hold it for the rest of the meeting.
Maybe we need to second that for us.
At the base.
Okay, I'll fetch it. There we go.
Nobody move.
All right.
You're a quick round.
Are there any other council comments or questions about the cap bank ordinance? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve, please. Adopt on second reading, granting final approval of ordinance number 15-2023. Second, please.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. You know, I'm going to stop here for a minute because I wanted to just forge ahead without just kind of commenting on the public comment. So John, thank you for that information. Happy to have it. And yeah, if you give it to Cindy or me after the meeting, that would be great to stay all the way through the meeting. Otherwise, I'm happy to spend some time with you if you want to come to City Hall or I'll come to your house. Let me know. Okay. We've got lots of time for that. Jeff, thank you for your question. We did have a meeting about a couple, last meeting, we talked about last meeting, Cindy? we talked about the village departments, the 295 recommended?
May 4th.
May 4th, okay. So that wasn't too long ago. Anyway, so there's really not much I can tell you. You know, when we get there was a resolution that I took off the agenda, and I'll touch base about that that resolution and why I removed it from the agenda when we get there. But I have nothing substantive to say about that site at the moment. And I appreciate your thoughts on the budget. Same with you, Jeff. I appreciate your thoughts on the budget. And Margaret, I appreciate everything that you said here. I'll just touch on a couple of things. You know, obviously it's important to mitigate, but you know, in order to mitigate, we're going to have to do some regulating as well. And one of the things that I've got hopefully coming down the pike is, you know, I'm interested in offering an ordinance for the council's consideration to relieve people of the cost of permitting fees and things like that, application fees for mitigation work on the properties. So that's something that's going to be coming forward. That will be an ordinance. I hope it enjoys the support of the council. It's a way for us to kind of say, well, if you're going to do some mitigation work at your house, we'll at least cover the fees for the application and the permitting and that kind of thing, inspection fees. So, you know, I've been thinking about this for a while. I'll be moving forward with language to craft that. So that's one thing that the city can be doing to help its residents and business owners, you know, in the future, and to encourage people to mitigate, because the city can't do it all. As we've learned with the creek, as I personally learned with the creek, it's very difficult to mitigate all the things that you want to do. And I'm not going to talk about the creek so much tonight, but I will be talking about it soon. You know, I've withheld our, you know, our efforts to sort of move forward on that based on the expanded complexity and likely expanded cost of that. I need to reevaluate whether that's something the city will continue to kind of, I mean, we'll continue to look at it, but this particular project, I'm not sure whether we'll continue to look at it. So I'll have more on that as I decide, you know, as I work through some of the issues. Again, I appreciate your offer to help form the committee. Certainly, one of the things I'll be talking tonight about later on tonight is a feasibility study for a stormwater utility. That's something that we're going to need a lot of support from the business community and from the residents of the city. So we'll be talking a little bit about that later on. So that'll be a great opportunity. And I'm currently meeting with Lisa Easton monthly to get updates on the CLG process. So as I said, I think the last meeting, there are 3 separate ordinances that need to be amended in order for us to move forward with that. And as soon as, you know, our volunteers can draft that language and get it to me and our attorney for review, we'll be working through that process. Julie, thank you for your thoughts on the budget as well. Back to agenda. At this time, I like to acknowledge the public hearing and adoption of the 2023 budget. I will open the public hearing for the 2023 budget, and I'll note that the city has received approval from the DLG services on Friday, May 12th to adopt the budget. I'm going to talk just a few minutes about the budget. So we had a special budget meeting last Thursday, and I made what I thought were fairly comprehensive remarks about the budget. And so I see many of the same people in the room tonight. So I'm just going to kind of do a few highlights, and then we'll move into kind of questions and comments from the public, and then comments and questions from the council before moving forward. So I hope everybody's had a chance to look at the budget message, which has been on the city website now for a couple of weeks. It really does. It really is an effort to try and make it as user-friendly as possible in terms of understanding the budget and its impact on the tax levy and the taxpayer. So there's an overview here. I'm just going to note a couple of things that the budget has a total expenditure for municipal purposes of $7,118,725, and supported by a municipal levy of $3,941,841. The estimated tax rate for municipal purposes will increase by 0.0355, which is an 8.46 increase over 2022. And we do have on this document, the tax rate on the various assessed values, which you can see. Knowing your assessed value will give you pretty clear indication of what the difference with the increase in the taxes, your tax bill will be this year. So, on the next page, we just highlight some of the major swings that happened this year in the budget. There's information on the capital improvement projections. We will introduce an ordinance tonight for capital bonding, the capital bond for this year. We'll go through that a little bit more during the course of that. The revenues are well noted here, as are the appropriations. And then, our statutory and deferred charges, and then the appropriations specifically in support of operations in descending order. So what I noted last week basically was, in terms of my decisions, the revenues, we do our best job to kind of estimate what we think the revenues are going to be. We do a conservative number so that we don't come up short at the end of the year. In terms of appropriations, you can take a look at page 7 and see kind of what the major drivers are in terms of increases, decreases in terms of the appropriations. And just generally, I would note that, for me, you'll note that probably the largest increases in the budget are in salary and wage lines and in some of the departments. So there is a proposed 2% raise across the board for our staff. There have been a couple of specific places where we have raised individual salaries, the fire official, individual salaries for the DPW workers to bring them up to really something closer to a living wage, et cetera. There was also an emphasis on some professional development, everything from classes for commercial driver's licenses and certifications to other things. So those are really the drivers of any increases, any percentage increases that you'll see here. The only other increase that I would note is that we did include $30,000 this year for tree maintenance. We have a long list of trees that need to come down quickly, and I imagine that we'll probably spend that in pretty rapid order. Once got a list going, I'm going to walk through town next week. We're going to identify priorities, the most dangerous trees, and we'll get those out hopefully sometime in the next 2 months. So that's it. The only thing I would note is, I think it's important to note that the biggest driver in the budget this year, like last year, is our debt and our debt service. It's higher now than it's ever been, $1.6 million, almost 24% of our entire budget. So when we talk about, modest increases in salary and wage lines, I'm mindful that, our debt service is going to level, it's going to decline quite a lot in the next couple of years. I think it's important to note that. But at the same time, I think it's also important to realize that life goes on outside the debt service, and that our employees in particular deserve at a minimum a 2% wage increase. The inflation rate is much higher than that. So that's the short version of my budget speech that I gave last week. I'm happy to entertain questions or comments at this period, and then once we're done with the public comment period, the council will have some opportunities to speak to the budget. Michael, is there anything you want to add?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Well, please state your name and address.
Paul Stevens, 39 Quarry. Just real quick, Mayor, although the budget, the capital debt service is projected to go down, that's assuming we don't add to it with the $3.5 million that we have to bond for, and then somehow come up with the money to take care of our buildings. So, but I had other comments I wanted to make. I've gone through and looked at this again. I echo Judy's point that there hasn't been a lot of time since this got posted to actually dive into this and really understand it from the public's point of view. But I've identified some very large items that I have questions about, because there was a comment made at the meeting last week about there were some items that were falling off last year that we had to accommodate this year's budget by coming up with new funding. And I'm concerned that maybe we're setting ourselves up for the same thing this year in a couple of areas. In particular, in the area of public and private revenue that is to offset specific appropriations, there's a $180,000 revenue item for a Hunterdon County open space grant. I couldn't find the exact appropriation that was offsetting. I thought it needed to have one because it wasn't in section F. I'd like to know what that appropriation is. The other thing is, it sounds to me like it's gonna lock us into what, what we can and can't do with certain portions of the Clausen property. Because it's an open space grant, but I could be wrong there. Then there was something else called, general, capital surplus of, basically $175,000. And I don't know what the nature of that is or where it came from, or can we expect that in the future? Could not find the line item for the canvas revenue that you mentioned last week that was in the budget. I thought it was about $35,000, but I didn't see that anywhere. On the appropriation side, there was about $120,000 in the excluded from caps for things that are normally included in caps. And so I was kind of surprised to see them pulled out, because I thought the whole purpose of caps was to limit the growth of some of these items. And so are we setting ourselves in the future? And like this 120,000 goes to things like insurance, retirements, workman's comp, things that are going to automatically escalate. So by pulling them out of cap, a certain portion of them out of caps, what's that set us up for? Let's see, what else? Oh, I'll reserve my comments for the capital bonding at the public hearing for that on second reading. That's pretty much everything. Yeah, I think that was it. I mean, I want to know about these recurring, potentially one-off items instead of being reoccurring revenue that we're relying on in this budget. Thank you.
Thanks. I think I'm gonna go through these things as we go through, rather than wait till the end. So, and I'm gonna ask for my help out here. So the public-private revenue, the $180,000, the grant, this is the grant for the trails, is that right, Cindy?
It is, Mayor. And that's the money that when the county collects their open space tax every year, they give a percentage of it back to the municipalities. And they do it in a way where they bank your funding. So we have been banking money over the years that we've not spent. And so this is a project for Music Mountain, not the clock, a little bit of the Clausen stuff.
Almost was the
Yeah.
word. So I'll address that in a second.
But that's what this is for. It's our money. Every municipality in the county gets it. They allow you to bank it if you don't use it in that year. And so we bank.
So Paul, we're not gonna go back and forth. The Clausen property was not specifically included in that, that grant request. It was really just for Music Mountain, and said that possibly, I think possibly it would include parts of the Clausen property.
Just in case.
And we will certainly keep the public up to date on what happens with that. We'll know later on in the meeting, when we get to the resolutions, the bids that came in for this trail work are both slated to be rejected. And I'll talk about those when we get to them. The general capital surplus, Michael, do you want to touch on that for me, please?
Sure. Yeah. So this was, and Christie, I just want to make sure you're with us and you can hear me, Christie?
Under panelists. Oh, there she is. Second. Go ahead, Christie.
Christie, can you hear us? I'm going to continue to answer the question while you get your microphone on. So there was a deferred charge that corresponds to that capital surplus. There was an ordinance that's probably at this point about 20 years old that was in the general capital that was never funded. And so the auditors suggested that we close that loop. There is not going to be any spending on that or advance anymore. And so the capital surplus washes out that deferred charge. So it's, for lack of a better term, it's a paper transaction.
That is correct, Michael.
Thank you.
Where is the cannabis revenue? What line is that in?
Cannabis.
Yeah, the $35,000.
Yes, that's in, Christian, what revenue lines in cannabis in?
Fees and permits.
Thank you.
And Michael, can you speak to that, the $120,000 that's excluded from the capital insurance for his cost and retirements? Because we have a-
Yes, that jumped out at me too. So the state, the Department of the DLGS, as the mayor referred to earlier, decided that through their process, there are certain items that they are going to allow for a cap exemption. And those are the things that we've been talking about, state health benefits, cost of insurance, et cetera. So this year and this year only, we're permitted to take a portion of those expenses and move them outside the cap. Because these expenses are expenses that we have very, very little control over, and they would chew up our cap bank unneedingly. So I don't know if that's an exemption we're gonna see next year, but it does move those items to a different page in the budget. So what you should do mechanically is add those costs back to their corresponding appropriations and get your totals.
Paul, if you have a follow-up question, I'll take it. No? Thank you.
I speak.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Side note,
Can I have your name and address, please? We have to do it every time.
I'm sorry?
Your name and address.
Jeffrey Gordon, South Franklin Street, Michaelville. Side note is, when we're all done here with the budget, although it may not directly be involved with you, we got a school to pay for. And we're kind of staring down the barrel of that coming right after your budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just note that the school referendum was supported by the community, so the community voted to raise its own taxes, and our debt will be leveling off just about the time everybody gets slammed with the new debt. So that's out of my control. I've got nothing to say about that. I'm happy to, go on public record saying that I personally voted for the referendum. But it was a referendum, and that's one of the things that I want people to keep in mind about budgeting. I think that the Lambertville residents have a long, well-established history in terms of referendums in increasing their own taxes for what they see as important, valuable municipal services. What I have to do here in this budget and in every budget year is decide what municipal services the city deserves, what we can fund, and what we can handle responsibly. And part of my reasoning for everything that's happened in this budget is I believe that over the last year and a half, or since our last budget, we've been able to increase and improve municipal services on a number of fronts. So whether it's the DPW being up fully staffed, whether it's having extra help in City Hall to make sure that Nashville Matters gets printed for free and distributed to 2,500 homes. There are a lot of things here that we've done in the last year and a half that have a lot of added value to the city. So, I have to consider, not just the voices in the room, but the other 3,900 people and what they would hopefully consider as an important value that is included in every budget. I'm very mindful of it. I'm very mindful of the increase in the tax rate. Nobody likes to come here and do this, but I also don't think of this as a political decision. I think of it as what's best for our community. So I stand very firm in my priorities and in what I think is beneficial for the city and for its residents. So, and I think the referendums, the history of the referendums back that up. I think that's what Lambertville residents want. They want a good town with good schools. They want their trash picked up. They want their people looked after, et cetera. So I'll jump off the soapbox. Next, please.
Mayor, I would just comment about the referendum, though. You talked about debt, and we purchased the Blossom property without a referendum, so.
That has been noted. And we're still in public comment period. We can talk about it in a few minutes if you like. Are there people in the room? Online in public? Okay, are the people online? Okay, may I have a motion to close the public comment period, please? May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Thank you. So let's move on to council comments. You're absolutely right, Councilman. And I think that this council has made a very strong statement in its mission to sell 2 buildings and to recoup some of the debt. So that's all I can say on that. I was the mayor then. I'm from New England, where we have a town meeting where everybody gets to say all the time. I love referendums, and I'm going to talk about a referendum later on in the meeting, a specific referendum that I'm going to put before the city, probably in 2024. presidential election. So we'll get to that. So thoughts on the budget from the council? Karen, would you start? Or-
Yeah, I would just like to say that, first of all, I appreciate all the hard work that you, Mayor, and Michael and others have done on the budget. This is very challenging, and I think it would be, I don't want to say unfair, but it kind of shortchanges any feedback that we may be receiving from the public regarding the challenge, the opportunity. It's kind of like the public has thrown the gauntlet down to say, let's take a closer look, let's sharpen the pencil. And I support that. I agree with the comments that, we just had the public hearing a week ago. People are still kind of digesting it. I support, I want to take another look. Maybe you can shave a few dollars here and a few dollars there, and they add up. So, I would support that. I would participate in that. I'd be happy to, go offline and take a look and come back and, review it appropriately. But I really think, we talk about the people in the room. I feel personally that I represent everyone, not just the people in the room, not just the people who send us emails. And I personally hear from people regularly about the state of our tax situation. When I go to church, when I go to the gas station, if I'm in the gym and there's somebody from Lambertville, I hear about it, and I'm empathetic to that. And I know we all are empathetic. But I think this is an opportunity for us as a council to demonstrate that we are trying to make an effort to, to take a second look. If we can shave some of the percentage off the increase, that would be great, okay? Because we've made an effort, and I think it's really important for us as a council to be aware of the feedback that we get from our public.
Yeah, again, I echo thanks for all the hard work on the budget and trying to educate us. The budget, as I've said before, we received the budget and, look, we don't go into production. As council people, we try to, in the past 2 weeks, try to decipher what it is. I'm on a learning curve myself, but this is my first year. But trying to decipher what it is and understand the city's finances, but also, try to balance that with the concerns of citizens, because affordability isn't just housing. Affordability is the cost of living here, taxes, and the cumulative impact. My concern has been over the years is that our taxes used to go up, a small amount, very different than what we've experienced in the past, for the 5th year now. And so $250 here, then $240, then $180. We're getting in the right trend, but we still, need to, again, sharpen the pencil, if you will. And that's why the council, I hear you in saying that, can you look at it again just one more time and see? And for us, it's the first time. So the opportunity to take a look and see what we could do, Councilwoman Lambert's suggestion, I think is a good one. I still have some questions, from last week. And again, there are a lot of costs. Things are expensive. We keep talking, the one thing I do, and echoing Councilman Lott's comment, about our debt situation, which has been kind of bandied around. And I don't want to sell it to what it is. Our old debt is going down, but our new debt that we had are now took under our belt from buying Clausen property and from the IDA projects. At least the IDA projects we're getting paid back for. The Clausen property, we're not. We're taking some steps to make some money on it, but the bond anticipation notes and the interest on it and being hit with this inflation whammy, that's a lot of our money. I mean, and we have to like just kind of, I hate to keep saying it, but I always like, I think transparency and the truth is a really great thing for everybody. So I just want to say that there's that unknown out there. Yeah, our debt is going down, but then we're going to have to make those bond anticipation notes thrown into bonds. And what is that going to look like? So it's not like we're going to get a holiday anytime soon. So it's not a horrible thing to try to take a look again, because I do hear from people, and it's not, people don't always come to council meetings and say things, but the one thing people always say to me is, man, taxes keep going up. And so I do feel the responsibility from hearing that. So I will stop there and pass the mic.
So I agree, and I think that, you know, one of the things that I appreciate that the mayor has done is made this a transparent process. And, you know, the fact that we have 2 hearings to go over this now, I think is a real benefit. And I've seen more involvement in the public than I've ever seen before with the budget. And so I think by looking at it again and seeing if there is anything we can cut, I think that is consistent with what you've done in terms of having transparency. And so if my understanding is correct in that we don't need to necessarily pass it tonight, but we can move it, you know, a few weeks. I think that would make sense. You know, I think that the budget is unfortunately a good one. You know, the increases are unsustainable, I think, for many people in town, and that really concerns me. You know, we're in a unique position after Ida where we had to spend a lot of money that we were not anticipating spending, and because we haven't gotten the money back, we're still suffering from that, and there's not much we can do about that. So we may look at this, and there may not be much that we can cut, but I think, you know, my feeling is I think we do owe it to the constituents and residents of Glenville to take another look at it to see if there's any savings there.
Hopefully, if we have the opportunity to go through it, you know, one of the things from the council and the public is that we may find a way to lessen it. How much? I don't know. That's going to take another go at the at the budget itself, and at that we'll be able to, as the mayor said, make sure that we are able to meet the expectations for service from the public. But let's see if we can roll back some of the increases in the budget, and it may not help this looking at it again. We may come back, right? And but I know we'll all be involved with it, and but at least we could give it a closer look, and if there's a way to save, then there's a way to save. If there's things that we're going to have to cut, then you know that's part of the process. But I think looking at it again is would be a good exercise. I know how much work you put into it there, and Michael, and then the staff and all getting this together for doing it. But let's take a step back and look at it, and then come back when the data is established, and and share it with professionals and see how we come out of it.
Excuse me, Mayor, I don't think anybody, I'm speaking for my fellow council members, but I don't think anybody's saying we need to start over. I think what we're asking for, I know what I'm asking for, is just the opportunity, just 2 more weeks to, you know, kick it to the June 1st meeting for approval. We can take the opportunity during this next 2 weeks to look at this, see if we can't shave some numbers, you know, a little bit here, a little bit there, looking at operating expenses. And you know what? I don't know if it does have an impact on how we deliver some services, then the public can hear that. And like the public can decide. They can push back at us and say, no, we want the tax increase. I don't expect that to be an answer, but, I think it's good and it's noble to try to keep the level of service up, but at some point, based on our debt situation, based on the cost scale, the cost of inflation and what we've been hit with in terms of, the item repairs and the bond notes, the interest on bond notes, it may be unrealistic to say we just have to keep going at the level we've been going at. And we got to ask those hard questions. And I'm just asking for 2 weeks to be able to do that. That's all. That's all I'm asking for. And I would, like I said, I would be happy to do it. I'll enlist Councilwoman Kaminsky to help me out. But, and
I have a calculator.
yeah, I have to take off my shoes. So, but I, because I know how much work has gone into this, and I don't want to just push it back. I want to be part of trying to help resolve this. One of the things, like, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I get a little stipend. There's $1,100 or $800 or whatever it is, that if I give it back, there's $800 that we don't have to worry about anymore. You know what I mean? Like, so just like, I'm looking for those kinds of numbers, not draconian cuts. So anyway, that's my pitch. So thank you.
And I just have a question for Christie.
Yes.
Christie, if the budget doesn't get adopted tonight, and it doesn't look like it's going to, what do we do about, estimated tax bills? Is there an action that we have to take? Because there's a whole system that we have to go through to do this. Is there an action of the governing body to authorize estimated tax bills? Christie, Michael, somebody?
I know we talked that we were going to do it, and I know there's been a change with the tax collector. I am going to be in the office tomorrow, so I can reach out to the tax collector. I mean, I think that there is a resolution that needs to be done to authorize sending out estimated tax bills, but unfortunately, I'm not sure what that resolution is or looks like because it comes from the tax collector.
Thanks, Christie. I just know that when we've done estimated tax bills before, and it does take, Sue, how many weeks?
It's a process.
Yeah.
Tapes have to be ran
Right.
and sent out to the vendor, and
We have to
the
hire a company.
resolution that has to be dated, it has a certain time frame that has to be submitted to the government too. Also, it's a whole time frame that's in, not only processing the bills and getting them mailed out,
Yeah.
but
My concern though is that if we don't do something for estimated tax bills, then we won't be able to pay our bills in August because you won't have that source of revenue coming in.
Right.
So, with that said, you're not going to pass this budget tonight. Would you consider approving that resolution? We've done it in the past. I don't have it. I was not prepared for tonight, but at least it gives us that 2 weeks to
Yes,
move
I would
into that,
consider doing that.
into
I
that direction.
Because if that's what it's gonna take to kind of, negotiate us to that thing, yeah, that's a reasonable thing to do. We have to be able to pay our bills, right? We have to, and I
Then just so
apologize in
you-
advance for the additional work. And,
It's not the additional work, Councilwoman Lambert. It's a concern that in August, we won't have money to pay our bills. First of all, and second of all, this is probably going to cost about $3,000. So just so you know.
Right, I'm going to take control of the dais for a few minutes. Up until about 3 o'clock this afternoon, not a single council member had approached me about any of this. I get completely broad-sided if this conversation was going to happen. And I'm frustrated and flummoxed, quite honestly. This council has had ample opportunity to be a part of this process. Michael, the budget hearings were when? In November, correct? I'd be very curious to know how many of the council members showed up at those meetings. That's the first one. The second thing, I've been working on this budget. I invited the council members to attend the finance committee meetings. I had 2 council people attend 2 meetings. I've worked my tail off to be transparent and planning. I introduced the budget. I had an additional hearing. I worked my hardest to make sure that all the information is out there. And not one single council person has come to me before this evening to say, I'd like to have some input on the budget. Not one of you. It's very frustrating for me, very deeply frustrating. I think that I'm a pretty reasonable person, willing to work, compromise all kinds of things. Nobody on this council, nobody called me and said, could we please talk about the budget? Not once. And here we are, the night that I've added an additional meeting, I've gone through things, I've been made myself completely available to the public time and time again. You want to talk about the budget? That's fine. The time to talk about the budget was 3 weeks ago. Everybody has had ample opportunity. I'm always in City Hall. I'm always available for you, and you. Nobody came to me. Nobody. So if this budget's not going to pass tonight, that's fine. We'll do this, but I want to go on record strongly as saying that I absolutely do not like this. It undermines my authority. It undermines my ability to get anything done. It feels political. It feels awful to me personally. You can shake your head all you want, Council President, but you're not in charge of my emotions.
I'm not, no, I hear you. I'm not stopping you from talking.
Very deeply frustrating. So, with all of that said, it appears as though we're not going to adopt the budget tonight. And that's a surprise to me. So what's the process here? Phil, can you help us out? How do we do this?
To carry the public hearing for the budget. That's the first thing.
Public hearing was closed.
It was, yeah. This would, it would be considered amendments to the budget, I think. So there would have to be hearings on the amended budget. So the amended budget would be adopted by resolution. I wasn't prepared for this either, so I know the budget amendment process. I don't want to speak and misspeak, so there is a budget amendment process. I'll be able to lay that out for the city going forward. As to the
Anything over 10%, right, you have to renotice
We can
and.
re-advertise, but we could suspend the hearing. And we don't have to advertise again if there's not a 10% swing in line.
it's true.
I believe they either have to vote or table it. And if they table it, then it would go on the next agenda. I think there has to be an action because the budget adoption would be next on the agenda. We had the public hearing and then we would make a motion to adopt the budget. So it would either be a motion and everybody would vote, or we would have to table it.
If we tabled it and then amended, that's what concerns me. So I think it would have to be a vote, and then
What's a concern to table then amendment?
well, we table the existing budget
Right.
and then we amend it. It's not, I mean, we're taking this budget off the table and then amending it at the next.
We have had times when the DLGS has not approved the budget in time for our public hearing. We continued, we had the public hearing. We didn't take action until we received approval. All we really did was close the public hearing portion.
So I like to, we carry the table.
Make a motion to carry
Carry to the
to the
next.
June 1st meeting.
Yeah, that would be appropriate.
And then would we do the motion, Mayor, for the estimated tax bills?
I have concerns about that as well.
Okay.
I think we would need, in order, that resolution would need, I think, an estimated
Amount?
annual tax levy that has to accompany the tax collector, the CFO. I don't know, unless we have that now, but I'm not sure that we do.
You are right, you are correct. It has to have an estimated tax levy for 2023, because we did do it last year. So Lindsay pulled it up on in here. So we do have calculations, so that means we're even further behind.
Yeah, I mean, I think the next step either needs to be a motion to adopt or a motion to table. So I think that somebody on council would have to make a motion on one way or the other.
Suggest it's a motion to table.
Table or to carry, this table can be considered a motion to defeat, you table it. you never take it.
No,
My
table would
concern-
carry, it would essentially carry the vote until we take it off the table.
We would have to, if we do a motion, if we were to not adopt and it was voted down, I think that would set us back to the very beginning of the process,
Agreed.
which would be at least 4 to 6 weeks of noticing and such. So I think if anything we do to table it would be the way to go, based on the comments of the council, that I think this would have more time to trim, so to speak, rather than start over.
Is that correct, Bill?
Yes, so motion made.
And does that need to be a unanimous vote? Okay. Did someone want to make a motion, please?
So moved.
No, what's the motion?
Motion to table the budget to the June 1st meeting.
Is there a
Is that
second?
correct, Bill?
Is there a second? Hey, Cindy, Matt, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Kaminsky,
Yes.
Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Lai,
Yes.
Council President Stegman.
Yes.
Mayor No.
No. Motion carries.
Could I hear again what this is going to cost us in
I don't know, Helen, I know last year was about $3,000.
$3,000? I'm just wondering how much we could possibly save.
Well, hopefully it'll be more than $3,000. All right, I'd like to move on, please. We have next proclamation. This is a proclamation for Building Safety Month. Could we not talk, please, when we're working at the days? Tim Rogers asked if the council would consider this proclamation designating May Building Safety Month. I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas the city of Blandford is committed to recognizing that our growth and strength depends on the safety and essential role of our homes, buildings, and infrastructure that both in everyday life and when disasters strike. And whereas our confidence in the resilience of these buildings that make up our community is achieved through the devotion of vigilant guardians, building safety, and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespeople, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these guardians are dedicated members of the International Code Council, a nonprofit that brings together local, state, and federal officials that are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, play, and whereas these modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from natural disasters such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, floods, and earthquakes, which, according to a FEMA commission study by the National Institute of Building Sciences, provide $11 in future mitigation benefits for every dollar invested. And whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown protectors of public safety, our local code officials, who assure us of safe, efficient, and livable buildings that are essential to America's prosperity. And it starts with you. The theme for Building Safety Month 2023 encourages all of us to raise awareness about building safety on a personal, local, and global scale. And whereas each year, in observance of Building Safety Month, people all over the world are asked to consider the commitment to improve building safety, resilience, and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all of us by local and state building departments, fire prevention bureaus, and federal agencies protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, be resolved by the governing body of the city of Lambertville and the county of Hunterdon, state of New Jersey, the month of May 2023 is hereby proclaimed as Building Safety Month. Be it further resolved that citizens are encouraged to join in the communities and participate in the Building Safety Month. Any questions or comments from the council on this proclamation? Let's have a motion to adopt the proclamation in support of building safety month.
So,
Second, please. Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Resolutions, this is the consent agenda. Following resolutions on the consent agenda are considered routine and shall be enacted by one motion. Should any member of the city council seek separate discussions of any item, that item shall be removed and discussed separately. The only thing I would like to quickly note is that we a resolution to hire Catherine McLaren as a certified municipal court administrator for the city of Glenville at an annual salary of $65,000 prorated in the year one. So just note that we have our salary range out there for a certified court administrator and didn't gather any interest, so we had to raise it to the top of the level, which is $65,000. We've got somebody incredibly qualified. We interviewed her. She's met with the judge. She said she's going to be a very, very fine court administrator. She's leaving her position up in one county because her court is being split up or I forget what's happening to it. Consolidated.
Shared services.
Shared services. She's actually taking a pay cut of $5,000 to join us. But I'm very happy that she's joining us because she's an excellent candidate. Are there any other questions about any of the resolutions? Hearing none, I would ask someone to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So,
Have a second, please.
second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. I will note for the record that resolution number 8223, as it was formerly listed on the agenda, was a resolution to set up a funding agreement for the contract purchases of the village apartments. The wording that was in the original agenda was probably not the exact wording I would have chosen. It was really just a set of funding agreement. It wasn't specific designating us as the conditional developers. So pull that from the agenda because we have not heard back from the contract purchasers on that matter. The bills list. Hope everybody had a chance to look at the bills this month. If you have any questions, please ask them now. No, would someone kindly make a motion to adopt the bills list and the addendum to the bills list?
so
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Next is ordinances first reading. This is ordinance number 16-2023. This is an ordinance to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 3, Municipal Officers, Procedures, Departments, Boards, and Commissions, Section 16, Shade 8. I see that we have Helen here. I'd just like to thank Helen. As you'll look at the proposed amendment, you'll read it through in your agenda. You'll see it's a tremendous amount of work. As I noted in the last meeting, when we talked about introducing this, it's taken 6 to 8 months to get this language, and it's maybe even longer than that, but it's very much appreciated. Helen's worked very diligently with Bill, members of the Shade Tree Commission, myself, with Cindy. And so we're really grateful for your support. And I may ask you to stop back for the second reading if there are any questions from anybody. But you'll note that it was a lot of work. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about this. This ordinance number 16/2023.
I actually have a question. I guess it's a jurisdiction. So does this apply to, I guess, for lack of a better word, the downtown areas where there's lots of streets and sidewalks and curbs? Does it apply to Cottage Hill, Conant Hill, Music Mountain? It does.
It applies to any tree that hangs over any city right of way, whether it's a sidewalk or street or road.
Okay.
an alley.
yeah, that's currently in place because we took down 3 ash trees. We filed a permit, so it's all the trees that hang over the roadway or sidewalk.
Please have a motion to first reading of ordinance number 16/2023. Please. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. Yes, please.
Yeah, this has been a process that has grown in significance since the first time we had introduced a shade tree ordinance, and over that time period, I think we've come to learn that trees are an essential part of life, but essential part to the city to make sure that we double our efforts to make sure that where street trees should be back. And that has kind of been my feeling about it. And I'm glad the commission and everyone who worked on this feels the same way. So I think it's really important, and thank you for your work.
Next ordinance number 17-2023. It's an ordinance to amend the ranges in salary and wage ordinance. We do this periodically every year. So
Yes, at the end of every year, Sue will go through the salary and wage ordinance. It's got ranges for everybody, and as people are getting close to the higher range, we do this to either increase it, or sometimes when you have some changes in the form, like you'll see that we have somebody in here, the accounts receivable clerk, that's a new position, so we update it.
any questions from the council on this first reading? Then I'm going to ask for a motion for first reading. Ordinance. Have a second, please. Second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. The next is ordinance number 18-2023. This is an ordinance of the city of Lambertville and the county of Huntington, New Jersey, providing for various capital improvements of and for the city, appropriating $1,020,113 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,004,120 general improvement bonds or notes of the city to finance the same. So we talked a little bit about this. I made a slideshow a couple of months ago. I read the ordinance into the record. This is really to fund our DOT projects, our work on much needed work on Studford, Swan Streets, Union Street, Oriole Road, and additionally to make repairs to the library exterior, the sidewalks near the library in front of the municipal parking lot, and to deal with the giant hole in the roof at City Hall. It's not a giant hole, I'm sorry. It feels like a giant hole, but it's actually just so small that we don't even know where it is, but it still requires 3 buckets to catch the rainwater on the 3rd floor. So everything is listed in this ordinance. Are there any questions from the council on this first reading, on this introduction? Let me ask for a motion first, please.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. So the second reading and public hearing on this will be Wednesday.
It will be June 15th.
Thank you for that. Right, now moving on to ordinance's second reading. First is ordinance number 07-2023. An ordinance by the City Council, City of Lambertville, amending the City of Lambertville Code of Ordinances to repeal Chapter 19, to adopt a new Chapter 19, to adopt flood hazard maps, to designate a floodplain administrator, and providing for the severability and an effective date. As of this date, there are no proposed changes from the former meeting. I do have a couple of things, a couple of updates, and then the council can ask questions and we can decide how to proceed on this. So when we last met and last discussed this ordinance, there were 2 questions that we were required to answer before moving on. Not required, the council would like to have answered. One was a clarification about the DNR canal historic list, to see if that would be sufficient to be included as the categorization or of a historic structure definition. So I am in receipt of an email that I sent to the DEP and the Historic Preservation Office dated May 10th, asking for clarification. I've not heard back from them on clarifying whether we can use the DNR canal list. So as soon as we hear back from them, we will, that will factor into what we decide to do with this ordinance tonight. The second thing was, at my request, we contacted the DEP, who then contacted the NFIP. I thought, since one of the areas of concern for the ordinance was availability and ease of variance process for substantial damage determinations, that perhaps we could include language that would allow the city council to grant variances for the substantial damage determinations, which would streamline the process for those people who've just come out of a horrible situation, having a damaged house, substantially damaged house. The short answer is no. We could possibly create a standalone ordinance that would allow us to designate exactly which board or council would hear the substantial damage and the substantial improvement definite variance request, but it's complicated and it's not worth it, frankly, not worth the time or the workaround. So Bill and I had a conversation about this. I forwarded all the language to the council. I think it's very straightforward that there's no workaround for the substantial damage variance process. So that said, it really is just down to this one question of whether the DEP and the Historic Preservation Office will accept our proposal to consider using the DNR canal list as a potential starting base for a historic structure definition. I have not, you're gonna have to, I'm not, John, no.
Okay, fine.
You can wait, please, until the time. So once I have clarity on that, what I would suggest with this ordinance tonight, I did talk to the DEP, I told them our concerns, and he suggested he was willing, said it would be okay if we carried this again. So that's what I would propose to the council until I have a firm answer on this historic structure definition. I do think that we're going to probably, my guess is that we're going to find them to wait until the CLG is complete, certified local government is complete. But hopefully I'm wrong, and we'll come back with a positive and included, and the passage of this ordinance. But sure, next meeting. So, further questions from the council about this?
Not just that, I appreciate it, since I kind of was involved in finding a way to have the DNR Canal Commission individual structure survey. And I spoke to the mayor about it. We kind of went back and forth about it. And I said, what I say some other times, if you don't ask, the answer is no. So let's see what happens. And at least we know we attempted to use historic nature and research that has been done in the city in the past. It is acceptable. If it's not, it's not. But so if that's what's delaying it now, it's I don't know how it's going to go. I'm optimistic and pessimistic at the same time. But at least I can say we tried. So that I thank the mayor for sending it on.
We have the ordinance in place, and we talked to the DEP, and they said it's not a problem, so don't worry about it. So unless there are no other comments, I would ask for a motion to carry this to our next meeting.
Mayor, just one thing, just not the certified local government, I'm happy to help with the ordinance on that. I've worked with this before.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to help. I think ultimately, that's really going to benefit the city, so.
It absolutely will, yeah, absolutely. And so we're meeting on June 5th. We're meeting once a month to go through all of the nuts and bolts of what next needs to be done. So thank you for the offer. And motion to carry this, please.
So moved.
And second, please. Second. All in favor of carrying this ordinance to the June, I'm sorry, where are we now?
June 15th is what this would be.
June 15th meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Ordinance number 10-2023. This is an ordinance to amend the Lakeville City Code 2014, Chapter 4, Section 11, Wildlife Feeding Ordinance.
I think we skipped number 9.
Oops, I'm sorry. Yes. Well, let's go back. Ordinance number 9-2023. This is an ordinance to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 4, Police Regulations, Sections 1 through 4. This is one of the 4 or 5 ordinances that the DEP has asked us to put on the books for our MS4 Tier A permit. And had a conversation about this in the last meeting. It opens up the public hearing. Let's see if there are any members of the public who would like to speak to this ordinance. Or have a question about it?
It's on,
We have different pages.
oh, no, on the top. Oh, no. I don't see any notes in that. Oh, sorry.
Different agendas. Anybody online who would like to speak to this ordinance? We have a motion to close the public comment period on ordinance number 09-2023. Second, please. Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So are there any questions or comments from the council on this ordinance? Ask for motion to adopt on second reading, grant the final approval of ordinance number 09-2023. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. The motion carries. Now we're on to ordinance number 10-2023, feeding wildlife. So again, this is language that's required for the MS4 Tier A permit. The members of the public would like to speak on feeding wildlife.
Can you use a microphone? I'm sorry.
Sure.
It just, I don't know, maybe.
Try to hear.
Yeah. All right. It's not working.
Wait, is it lit?
It is.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Whoa.
All right. All right. Well, I'd hate to think you'd miss out on the wildlife feeding ordinance. So this is what we're talking about. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to the wildlife feeding ordinance? Anybody in line? I have a motion to close the public hearing on ordinance for 10-2023.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Anybody in the council have anything to say about this ordinance?
If I may.
Please.
I don't even know how many years ago it is. But there were problems down at Cavallo Park that started us with originally not feeding the geese because they didn't play well on the playground equipment. And so I'm glad that we're updating it and you know, we're protecting the lives of these animals by not feeding them. That's kind of like counterintuitive, but it's also, you know, it's a public safety issue as well. So I'm glad to see that we have expanded it so much.
Thank you. And I would note that the DNR canal parks also prohibited feeding the wildlife. So may I have a motion to adopt on second reading, granting final approval of ordinance number 10-2023? So please. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. This is ordinance number 11-2023. It's an ordinance to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 12, Sanitation, Section 3, dumpsters, refuse containers, dumpsters, and pods. This is-
Oh, that's not.
It's in and out.
Yeah. Yeah. So, listen to public comments. Have a motion to close the public comment period for ordinance number 11-2023. Yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. Don't move.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. The other thing I would note about this ordinance is, I asked Cindy and Lindsay, I don't think they've had time doing it, to just contact some of the local dumpster guys, people. Oh, you did? Okay, to let them know, this is a substantial change, I think, for dumpster companies having to line dumpsters and having to keep them covered. It's also going to be something that we have to talk about during the permitting process, dumpsters on streets. Just want to make sure that that for the record.
I just want to note that I did reach out to everybody. I heard back from one company.
Any other questions or comments from the council on this? Have a motion to adopt on second reading, granting final approval of ordinance number 11-2023. And seconds. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Ordinance number 13-2023. This is an ordinance to amend the Landfill City Code 2014, Chapter 12, sanitation, recycling, section 2.9, weeds, shrubbery, clippings, limbs, branches, and other garden waste, question meeting by Public Works Yard Waste Collection Program. So this ordinance is being amended to remove some older sections that limited the months the yard was open and add the yard waste in place and clarify the yard waste and things to be placed to the curb. So we need to amend this ordinance and then it just gets amended and carried.
Yeah, well, it gets amended and then the public hearing is scheduled for June 15th, correct?
So it gets amended, we change the language, give proper noticing, and then it gets.
Correct.
So we understand that. Any questions about from council?
I have a question.
Yes.
In the version I have on 2.11 yard waste collection, has that been amended? That was the one about the
Yes.
putting the.
So what we did is everything that has a strikeout that starts with sweeping, raking, that first paragraph goes away.
Oh, okay,
And then beginning October 1 through December 31st goes away.
okay.
And then it really just says leaves shall be placed in a compostable, biodegradable bag. And then we just, kind of cleaned up, just, it said with, it should have said will. There was a place in the very last paragraph before the definition of grass clippings that said at any other time. We just removed that from it. So basically, we just cleaned it up, moved some things around, expanded a little bit on yard waste so that it was easier. But it was a substantial change, so you have to amend, and then we have to hold a public hearing on June 15th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I would just like to thank Lieutenant Brown, and he brought this to our attention. There was some inconsistency in language between this ordinance and the littering ordinance. So thank you, Lieutenant, for putting that out, setting us on the straight and narrow path to a solid ordinance. So I would ask for a motion to amend ordinance number 12-2023 with a second reading and public hearing on June 15th, 2023. Second, please. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Who seconded? I'm sorry, I didn't catch. Thank you.
So next is ordinance number 13-2023. It's an ordinance to amend the Landfill City Code 2014, Chapter 9, Animal Control, Section 3.3, pet waste, owner responsibility for removal of contaminants. This is required language from the MS4 Tier 8 permit. I would open this to public hearing. People will comment. Anybody in the room can speak to this? Is there anything online, Susan?
No hands raised.
Do we still have 12 people online?
17. It went up to 20 at one point, and now we're down to 17.
Okay, thank you. To make a motion to close the public hearing for ordinance number 13-2023. Please. All right. Motion carries. And now, unless the council has any remarks to make about this ordinance, I would ask for motion to approve by second reading for ordinance number 13-2023.
I'd just like to say, if I may, we're pet owners. And it's disheartening to think that we have to do this to have people pick up after their pets. And if this is what it's going to take, fine, but it's really kind of embarrassing that in this day and age, that people don't automatically do it. And, you know, I know why we're doing it, but it's just disappointing.
So, would someone make a motion, please?
Don't move.
Second.
Check.
And all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Ordinance number 14-2023, an ordinance to amend the land use zoning ordinances, section C 1500 to include private storm drain inlet retrofitting. We need to continue this to the public hearing on June 15th because the planning board has not had to review and make a recommendation. So, would someone on the council please make a motion to continue the public hearing to June 15th, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Motion carries. All right, a few things of correspondence. State of New Jersey DOT makes applications for fiscal year 2023 state aid programs. So every year by July 1st, we have to identify a project or a project. Just DOT for funding of that project. So we haven't begun that project yet, but the process typically the way that works is I'll go out with Lieutenant Brown, I'll ask the department how it works. Anybody else on the council who notices anything in particular in terms of roadways that they think needs attention, we'll go out and take a look at the engineer come with us and we'll make an assessment and then make a request to the DOT. Also note that JCP&L BPU docket number ER2302060 notice of public hearing for JCP&L seeking BPU review and approval of deferred balance and accumulated with respect to solar renewable energy certificate plans. Township of Reddington sends a resolution of support for invasive species, and the Borough of Lebanon sends a resolution of support for Bill 861, permitting municipalities to benefit an annual event for the burning of trees. Couple notes about ongoing projects, really no updates. Church Street, we're waiting to hear back from the engineer about DOT permits. It's probably going to be a couple months before I have a on that. And I don't have an update on the USDA and RCS basic map project. Have some preliminary analysis from the USDA in the next couple of months. Convenience hours coming up Saturday, June 3rd, 2023, and June 17th from 9 to noon, and Wednesday, June 21st, from 3 to 5. Spark Week is over. Please remember to pay for your trash bulk items with the clerk's office or the city website. Memorial Day parade will be held on Monday, May 29th, with step off at 9 a.m. on North Union and Cherry Street. Robert Miller of West Amwell Township of Services here as Grand Marshal. Also make a note that this is Pride weekend. Some of us in the council will be marching. Hope to see you all out there. It's going to be a fantastic weekend. Hopefully it won't rain. Looking forward to being out there. And lastly, I wanted to just talk about the stormwater utility feasibility study grant. So I talked about this a little bit over the last year and a half, and back in the fall, the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters and New Jersey Futures presented to the council a presentation on stormwater utilities. The state of New Jersey does allow stormwater utilities currently aren't any in the state yet. There are municipalities that are looking at them, and we have worked with New Jersey Futures and the League of Conservation Voters. They will be coming to our June 1st meeting and doing another presentation on stormwater utilities, and they have offered generously to offer us a grant of $70,000 to fund the study, and that money should we decide to accept it, will be paid directly into the city coffers and put out an RFP. The bids come in below $70,000, which is the idea. And then we're fully funded to do a feasibility study for a stormwater utility. It comes in a little higher, but we have the option to either not accept the grant funding or to make up the difference. So I just want to give everybody a heads up that this is coming. I'm a strong proponent of conducting a feasibility study for stormwater. We talk about it all the time. This will give us, a study will identify whether it's a good option for the city of Lambertville. And I would also note that once the study is complete, complete. Hope we'll have a lot of buy-in, hopefully from both business community and residential community. I will take this to a referendum. It doesn't have to go to a referendum, but I want the residents of Lambertville to vote on this themselves. And it'll be be a year or so informing people of the benefits of this strong range. So, there's something to. So a good part of the meeting, June 1st, will be devoted to the presentation about that. At this point, I will open up the meeting for the second round of public participation. Same rules as before. 3 minutes at the dais. Please state your name and address. Give uninterrupted time for your questions and or your comments.
Hi, I'm Cindy Stonewall from 7 Franklin Street. I'm kind of confused. So I want to put out my question, and maybe from out here, it sounded like the delay on the budget in order to get more time to shave money off the budget will cost us $3,000. Yeah, I don't know if I got that right. So, and if I did anybody know that before the vote? So I don't know who answers the question. Did we just vote to delay so we could find money and it cost us $3,000?
So,
Yeah, I have an update on the estimated tax bills.
yeah.
They have to be on the street by June 30th. There's no wiggle room for that. That is law. It has to be on the street by June 30th. It is calculated by the finance department using the 2023 assessed values, and it is an estimate. And the only other option is you can borrow money via TANs to make up for not doing estimated taxes. So there's more debt we will incur by not having to tick the bills out on the street by the 30th.
And the $3,000 figure. came-
That's a rough estimate.
Rough estimate.
Yeah, because we subcontract that out. And I'm not sure, I can't remember if that includes postage. It could be $3,000 plus postage.
Thank you for that clarification.
When does that have to be on? So when does the estimated tax levy have to be authorized for you to get that out on time?
I was just told it's a calculation using the 2023 estimates.
The council has to approve the estimated amount.
Correct.
How much time do you need from their approval to get that out?
I didn't get a time frame for that.
Okay, because I'm just
But
curious as
it's
to whether.
it's gonna have to be a quick turnaround
Understood. Thank
because
you.
we got third party, we got to get stuff from Vital translated into Edmonds and then Edmonds to the third party to do the bills.
Thank you.
Got all that for the record. Thank you.
The John Hitchcock for 299 Forest Street, Lambertville, New Jersey. Have I made it clear that we are on the state and national register of historic places? I mean,
I think I
why
heard
are
that.
you asking what's historic? The Department of Interior standards, which you can download, are very clear about this. The city composition meets every standard. You only need one. There's like about 6 or 7 if I needed to memorize them. Well, what you do is just download it, look at it. We are on the state national register. We have all of the protections of the state national register against incursions by any use of municipal money. And I don't know why there's any question about what is historic, because it's very specifically laid out in the Department of Interior standards. Now, you don't know what it feels like to be frustrated there. I do. I think it's very important that we keep our eye on how important Lambertville is and how important heritage tourism will be for this community. And if we don't keep our eye on the bouncing ball, somebody else will grab it. I don't want to get involved in pointing fingers across the river, but somebody tried to grab Daniel Gray and call him Jerry Brown and say he was the person who got all the boats across the river. And Larry has never stopped thanking me for making a fool of themselves over there because they bought the story from the wrong guy. I've known Larry for 50 years. The important thing here is there are a whole new set of guidelines. One June 2nd, 2015, which are 7.4, NJSA 7.4, 2 through 8, that even the village apartments, because of its proximity to the Holcomb Farm, and the rest of the historic district has to go before the Historic Sites Council, which in essence holds a meeting with our population, gets its feedback, and then reports their findings to, I believe, the commissioner for recommendation. The other thing that I hopefully is understood is that when we restored City Hall, I got a $400,000 federal grant, which makes the Department of Interior standards regulatory. And that study that was done is the furthest thing from regulatory, and actually is the other side of it, removing character defining elements like windows, putting lights in the floor, and approaching things that don't need to be approached to way far in the future, and we may even be exempt. So if there's anyone here that needs some time, let's do it now, while I still have it. Thankfully, Barbara and I again have some more books and screenplays in the works, and maybe we're going to Broadway to see what we do, who knows? But please, when we say the regulatory aspects of what goes on with City Hall, that's it, the then mayor off, because we had to put the roof shingles back the way they were originally, and each one had to be cut. Costs a little bit more than your average job. I'm going to turn over this information here, which shows this was the application. We were approved in 1983. If I might, commission approach.
Please.
Stay at a car accident.
Yeah, Paul Stevens, 39 Quarry. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Cindy and Lindsay for, since I was the one that got up here a few meetings ago and urged you, when there are big, long ordinances in there, and there's changes in them, to please highlight the changes. I did download the long agenda for today and saw that. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Anyone else in the room? Anybody online? Can I have a motion to close the public comment period, please? Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Thank you. We have a motion to close the meeting, adjourn the meeting. Second? All in favor, please say aye. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
With Cindy, whoever did it.